golf match.
We're not leaving today. I canceled.
Got canceled. Page 45, section 2.3.
Rain.
Was it supposed to be there or here? Oh, general.
It's gonna rain so bad today.
Yeah, it's supposed to like pour.
Yeah, we can all. We're gonna die today. It's the last day of the world. We're all dying.
Okay, page 45. We're talking about cycling of matter.
Cameraman's gonna get the lights.
Jamie, will you pull the back for me there? Thank you. Okay. Now, first today we're talking about cycling, and what we mean is how matter cycles through the ecosystem. For instance, in my
Waste some more time, Chris.
Trying to level it out. Perfect. Oh, it didn't work.
Dude, just keep it on the ground and then push it. Then open the thing and it'll automatically level something up.
Just keep messing around with it.
Got it.
Okay. In my Coke can here is some water. I like to put water in my Coke can. See it there. And let me ask you a question. How old do you think that water is?
Yesterday. Trillions.
Today?
Of weeks
It's
old.
5 seconds ago.
An hour and a half. No, the water comes from the cloud.
Water is cycles. It moves in cycles. And the actual water molecules are probably as old as our solar system, 4.5 billion years. They were created in the explosion of a star. And if you take astronomy, we study how that works.
Wait, so that water from like 4 million years ago?
It's 4.5 billion years old.
That's nasty. You're right.
What?
And here's...
Can't create water though, but like...
there are some ways to do it, but most of the water just cycles. And let me show you the way that it cycles. This is a picture from your book, page 46. This shows the water cycle. It's pretty simple. Most of the water on the earth is in the ocean. And the ocean water evaporates, and some of the water molecules go up into the sky. And the molecules collect in the sky as clouds, or what we call humidity. And the winds push the clouds and the humidity over the land. And often it rains back down. That's precipitation, raining back down of the water onto the land. The water gets on the land and sometimes forms into lakes and streams and rivers. And eventually, a lot of it will run back off into the ocean because the land sits above the ocean. And so if it rains here, a lot of it runs off. Now, some of it seeps into the ground and becomes what we call groundwaters. The ground is full of water. And if you've ever been sit down on the ground on your knees, your jeans get a little wet. That's from water that's in the ground. Now, if you go down deep into the ground, there's what we call these aquifers, huge sources of underground water that sometimes we'll drill wells down into. If you have a home well, if you drill a tube down in there, the water's at high pressure and it'll come shooting out. Do you have a question?
Yeah, sometimes if you're at the beach and you dig a really big hole, the water comes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How deep does the water go?
How deep does the water go in the ocean?
Yeah, no, down the aquifer.
That's a good question.
400 billion feet.
I don't know. In the oceans, it goes down to about the deepest parts of the ocean are about 7 miles.
So I can swim down there?
What?
Now,
some of the water, listen, some of the water is pulled up by plants out of the soil and exists in their bodies. Cells are 60-something, 70% water. So a lot of the water is pulled up and goes into the cells of the plants, and some of the water comes out of the leaves through a process called transpiration. So water comes up through plants too. And of course animals will drink the water, and the water's in our bodies for a while, and we get rid of it. Some comes out with every breath. You see, fog up a window when you breathe on it. That's from water molecules in your breath. And so every once in a while, when you go to the bathroom, you pee, and you breathe out some water. And so every once in a while, you got to drink some more water. And some of the water is used in your metabolism and your processes of breaking down food for energy and that sort of thing. So that's the water cycle. Most of the water on the earth is 4.5 billion years old and just cycles from one form to the other, and it has been doing so and will do so in the future. Video footage.
On Earth, water is stable in its solid, liquid, and gaseous phases. This allows for the continual movement of water between Earth's surface and atmosphere through evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. Water evaporates from lakes and oceans to form water vapor in the air. Water vapor is also added to the air when plants pull water from the ground and lose water from their leaves through the process of transpiration. Water vapor condenses on dust in the air and forms clouds. Further condensation makes small drops that build in size until they fall from the clouds as precipitation in the form of rain, ice, or snow. Precipitation is absorbed into the earth as groundwater. It also accumulates in lakes and oceans, which are further fed from river runoff. The cycle continues again and again.
Interesting. Now, some of the other molecules that humans that all animals are made of, and plants, are cycling also. And one of the most important ones is carbon. If you were to take all the water out of your body, most of your body would be carbon. And that's the same with the trees and the birds and all the other organisms. They're mostly carbon. So where's the carbon come from? Well, carbon exists in the atmosphere. The air has carbon in it, called carbon dioxide. And this is the source that eventually will get into plants and animals. What happens is plants pull carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into their bodies by the process called photosynthesis. You remember the organelle in the plant cell that does photosynthesis? The chloroplast.
Mm-hmm.
The chloroplast can pull carbon dioxide from the air, and then the carbon dioxide is said to be fixed. It's part of the plant and helps make up the plant's leaves and roots and stems, and all the parts of the plant are made of carbon. So the carbon is pulled from the atmosphere by photosynthesis and fixed. Now, the plants are then eaten by animals. So the way that we get our carbon is from eating plants, stealing their carbon. Or we eat animals that ate plants. But originally it all comes from plants. So the plants get it from the atmosphere, and then we steal it from the plants.
That's not nice.
We're all thieves. We're all killers. That's what we do. We eat the plants. And they have to die. But they taste good. So, once the animals have it, and the plants have it in their bodies, it's out of the atmosphere. But several things can happen to it then.
Whoa.
Guess leveling wasn't a good idea.
How we doing? You alright?
We're golden, Tony boy.
Alright, the plants and animals will often die. Right up here, Sophie. The Drew? The plants and animals will die. Their dead bodies will be decomposed. And some of the decomposition puts carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. The decomposition of the dead bodies of these plants and animals. And here, if you follow these arrows around, where's the decomposition? Where are the dead bodies? Here, right here, maybe? Where do you see that?
Right below the dudes is the decomposition.
Left, up, right there.
That's not decomposition, that's deposition.
We should read.
Come on, Drew.
Well, if the dead bodies, it's not really showing it here very well, but if the dead bodies of the plants and animals decompose, the carbon dioxide from their dead bodies goes back into the atmosphere.
Sweet.
Sometimes the dead bodies are buried for a long period of time and become what we call fossil fuels. But fossil fuels take millions of years to form. Oil, gas, and coal are all dead bodies of organisms that have been buried for millions of years underground. And what we do is we pull those fossil fuels out of the ground and we burn them. And that puts the carbon that was in there, the fossil fuels, back into the atmosphere.
Tengo una pregunta.
Yes.
So in like a million years, say, all the caskets in the graveyard are going to be full of oil?
Well, they're really not buried deep enough to become oil. The way you become oil is if you're buried in a way where no oxygen can get to you. And usually this happens in swamps and bogs. Almost all of the oil and coal and natural gas is from old swamps and bogs that had soil that's had mud that won't let any oxygen in. And it's really, it's most of it is the bodies of algae that was growing in those swamps and bogs that gets covered up and oxygen can't get to it, so it changes into oil and coal.
How long does it take to change?
If a body is just buried in the ground, oxygen can get to that, and then the bacteria decompose it, and then the carbon dioxide goes back in the atmosphere. So organisms that just a tree that falls in the woods, it's not going to ever become oil and coal and natural gas.
Is that why like all the oil rigs are deep out in the ocean?
No, not necessarily. There are some oil deposits in the oceans.
What about in the desert?
But most of the oil deposits that are in the oceans actually used to be land.
Right.
See, the ocean levels have risen and fallen over the years, over the millions of years. So some of the places that are ocean now used to be land. Most of the oil formed from bogs that were actually on the land.
Didn't they find...
Yes, wait,
How long does it take, you said, the swamp and bog?
Something like 300 million years.
What?
Yeah. To form oil and coal.
Isn't there oil in the desert?
If there is some oil in the desert, yeah, like Saudi Arabia, that's because that place 300 million years ago was a swamp bog area.
Interesting.
You know, continents move from place to place. In an area that used to be a bog, if the continent moves, might become a desert. Or an area that used to be a desert, if the continent moves, the weather changes, might become a bog. So the movement of the continents plays a big role in this too.
There
There is a water component of this cycle. Try and pay attention, this is not easy. Some of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will go into the ocean and react with the water in the ocean to form chemicals called bicarbonates. If you take carbon dioxide and react it chemically with water, it forms these bicarbonates. And a lot of the bicarbonates will fall out of the water and become sediment in the bottom of the ocean.
Like sodium bicarbonate?
It's like sodium bicarbonate. That's an example of a bicarbonate. So, that's where a lot of the carbon dioxide goes to. Now, a lot of the carbon dioxide will come out of organisms as they do a process called respiration. So plants do photosynthesis. Animals eat the plants, but both plants and animals do respiration. When you breathe out, carbon dioxide comes out of your breath through the respiration that your cells have done to make ATP. So that puts carbon dioxide back out into the atmosphere. So the carbon changes into a lot of different forms, but it just moves from one form to another. It never is created or destroyed, kind of like energy. A quick cycle is the photosynthesis in and respiration back out. That's a real quick one where it just goes from the atmosphere into organisms and back out. Some of the organisms die. It's in the ground for a while, but eventually will come back out. Video footage.
The air footage.
Oh, this is kind of funny. Old but funny. Call the carbon atom. There's no sound.
Probably not good.
Oh, I see.
Mr. Narrator, you breathe oxygen,
Start
don't
it
you?
over.
Why, yes, Cole, I do.
Well, why
Start
don't
it
you
over.
start there? Every time you breathe in,
There's nothing
you remove oxygen and other elements from the air. Then when you exhale, you release carbon dioxide, which is me and 2 of my oxygen friends. This process is called respiration. Look, carbon copies.
But Cole, what happens to the carbon next?
Whoa! Slow down, Mr. Narrator. I've only just begun telling you about the carbon cycle. Just like humans breathe, plants breathe too. But instead of breathing in oxygen, plants breathe in carbon dioxide that humans and other animals make. They turn the carbon dioxide into energy during the process called photosynthesis and release oxygen back into the air.
Wow, Cole, it sounds like that's the carbon cycle right there.
Hold your horses, Mr. Narrator. This isn't a race. Plants and animals are all made of carbon. When these organisms expire, fungi use the oxygen in the air to break down the carbon inside them and convert it to carbon dioxide, which is released back into the air in a process called decomposition.
Hey, I thought carbon was in everything. But this just sounds like living things.
Gee, Mr. Narrator, you're jumping ahead again. But since you brought it up, rivers, lakes, and oceans also play a big part in the carbon cycle. Bodies of water take in and release carbon from the surface depending upon the temperature. This process is called circulation. Also, low-carbon organisms in the ocean, such as mollusks, pull carbon lower in the water, furthering the circulation process.
Well, Cole, thanks for telling us about the carbon cycle. Join us next time when we...
Wait! I'm not done yet!
There's more?
This is just how the carbon cycle works naturally. However, when humans burn fossil fuels, such as coal, petroleum, and natural gas, more carbon is released into the air in the form of carbon dioxide. Also, deforestation means that less carbon dioxide is being taken in from the air by the trees.
Gee, Cole, it sounds like we're in a lot of trouble.
We are, Mr. Narrator. All that extra carbon dioxide in the air is contributing to global warming, which is melting the polar ice caps. We need to reverse these human effects and save the world.
Well, Cole, thanks for letting us know. Join us next week when we explore the world of cheese.
Okay, that was kind of silly, but
Isn't it like you can't breathe in like a closed space because you'll die of carbon monoxide poisoning?
you don't want too much carbon dioxide in the air. The air is about 0.2% carbon dioxide. 0.02, I think. It's very low, but there's a lot of air, so there's enough carbon dioxide around. You don't want to get too high levels of
So
carbon.
say you were stuck in like a closet that was airtight.
Yeah, carbon dioxide would build up, and you'd breathe too much of it, and you'd have problems. It could kill you.
That sucks.
That was a problem with the space. If you ever see the movie Apollo 13, the guys going to the moon. The carbon dioxide scrubber got broken, and it wasn't cleaning out the carbon dioxide out of the air. And they had to fix it.
Sorry. Well,
It was a
how
good
does one,
movie.
like not die on a plane?
What's
like,
that?
a long time?
They have carbon dioxide scrubbers
Oh,
that
okay.
take it out of the. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, that-
So, if you've probably heard of global warming before, global warming happens because all this carbon that's in the ground, we pull it out of the ground and we put it back in the air when we burn stuff. Every time we burn anything, you burn gas in your car, you burn coal to make electricity. All the power from electricity is made by burning. You put extra carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And the thing about carbon dioxide is it stores heat. And so it absorbs some sunlight and stores heat. So the atmosphere is slowly getting hotter. It happens very slowly. And it's only gone up about 2 degrees in the last 100 years. But the problem is, if it continues going up 2 degrees, 2 degrees, 2 degrees, and the greater the population of the Earth is, the faster it goes up, we got a problem. If we double our population, that at least doubles the rate at which we're producing carbon dioxide. And it gets a little bit more complicated, but you've heard a lot about global warming. That's a problem that we're going to have to deal with over the next 40 or 50 years.
Why, if it's like global warming, why are the winters getting colder?
They aren't.
They just feel cold.
They aren't.
And Mom just
It's
said-
kind of like the stock market, though. If you've ever seen the way the stock market does, I mean, the stock market goes up and down and up and down and up and down. But overall, the way the trend is in temperatures, it's kind of an upward trend.
Okay.
So some winters, yeah, it's going to get cold because that's just a big deal. But overall, if you look at the trend, it's upward. Yeah, last winter was cold. But overall, it's warmer, the average, if you average everything out. Okay, let's look at the next one, the nitrogen cycle. This is on page 48. Nitrogen is a chemical, is an atom that is used in your DNA molecules and used in your protein molecules. All of your DNA and protein would not exist if it weren't for nitrogen. So where does it come from? How do you get it in your body? Well, the atmosphere, the air, has a bunch of nitrogen in it. About 80% of the air is nitrogen. 4/5. Did you know that? You sit there, you think most of the air is oxygen, right? No. Only about 20% of the air is oxygen. About 80% is nitrogen. And so this nitrogen, you would think, okay, if I need nitrogen, I could just maybe breathe it in. It doesn't work like that. What happens is nitrogen is taken out of the atmosphere and goes into the soil. This arrow right here is the big one. These two arrows here. Nitrogen is taken out of the atmosphere and pulled into the soil by bacteria called nitrogen-fixing bacteria. Sometimes they live in plant roots. Sometimes they just live in the soil alone. And they will pull nitrogen out of the air and fix it. Fixing means change it to a form that plants can use. The form that plants can use is called nitrate. And so this atmospheric nitrogen can't be used. It's in a form that can't be used. It has to be changed by bacteria. And once it's changed, it can be sucked up into the plants. Sucked up into the bodies of the plants through the roots. And the plants are then eaten by animals. So we get it from eating plants. That's where we get our nitrogen. Or from eating animals that ate plants. So you can get nitrogen from eating cow meat, but the cow ate plants, and that's where it got it from.
What would happen if you didn't get enough nitrogen in your body?
It would be bad. Your body wouldn't be able to make proteins or DNA.
I'm putting it down.
You have to have a source of nitrogen.
And those are the only ways you can get nitrogen?
From eating.
Yeah.
That's how you get it.
Or you can become a nitrogen fixing bacteria.
Well, you're not able to do that.
I'll just become that by tomorrow.
Now, when
Sounds good.
animals and plants die or produce waste, every time you pee, there's a lot of nitrogen that comes out. Those wastes eventually make it back into the ground and can be used again. Sometimes the wastes go into the water and become part of the sediments in the oceans. But either way, that's basically how it works. Bacteria take it in, change it to a form that can be used by plants, and then animals eat the plants. And when those die, it's back in the soil. And it just keeps going around and around. Now, it's also true lightning plays a small role. Every time a lightning flashes, it changes some of the nitrogen in the atmosphere to nitrates that are heavy and fall out of the sky. And then get in the soils that plants can use. So lightning plays a role there. And there are also some bacteria called denitrifying bacteria that do the reverse. They remove nitrogen from the soil and put it back into the atmosphere. And that hurts the soil. The soil is very fertile if it has a lot of nitrogen in it. These denitrifying bacteria remove nitrogen from the soil. So they do things in the opposite. Denitrifying means taking the nitrogen out of the soil. So that we have good bacteria that help the plants grow, and we have bad bacteria that hurt the plants grow. You usually find these denitrifying bacteria in soil that doesn't have much oxygen in it, like swamps. Swamps are biologically important locations. You could probably guess. Let's watch a little video footage of this cycle.
What?
Nitrogen is another nutrient critical to plants and animals. The atmosphere is about 79% nitrogen gas, but neither plants nor animals can use it directly. Rather, it must be supplied to plants in the form of nitrates or ammonia. Certain types of bacteria which live in the root systems of plants provide plants with ammonia, which they then convert into amino acids for the generation of protein. Grazing animals, in turn, obtain amino acids and proteins from plants. Decomposer bacteria recycle ammonia from the amino acids found in dead organisms and the waste of living organisms. The recycled ammonia is used again by plants. Other bacteria convert ammonia into nitrates. Nitrates can be absorbed directly from the soil by plants. Nitrates can also be produced by electrical storms and other forms of combustion that cause nitrogen to react with atmospheric oxygen. In human ecosystems, such as farmland, ammonia and nitrates are supplied by chemical fertilizers or by animal waste. The nitrogen cycle is kept in balance by denitrifying bacteria, which are usually residents of muddy and boggy areas. These bacteria break down nitrates into nitrogen gas that is released back into the atmosphere.
Huh. That's it. That's the nitrogen cycle. Okay, the last cycle that's important to us is the phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus is a compound that's important also in DNA and in ATP. Remember that molecule ATP?
Triphosphate.
And you also find it in some other molecules in your body. And so where does it come from? Well, it doesn't have an atmospheric component. You don't find any phosphorus floating around in the atmosphere. It's in rocks. And what happens is rocks and minerals erode slowly as it rains and wind and weather erodes rocks and minerals down to their very component molecules. And the rocks and minerals will erode, and the soil, the dirt, gets the eroded phosphorus in it. So you got a lot of phosphorus in the dirt. And then plants pull the phosphates up out of the dirt and grow. And then animals, you see the plants here, the rocks will erode, and now you have soil phosphate, and the plants pull up the soil phosphate. And the plants make the DNA and ATP that's necessary, and then the animals eat the plants. And when plants and animals die or make wastes, the phosphates go back into the ground. So this whole part at the top here is the phosphorus cycle from the land, in the land. There's a whole aquatic phosphorus cycle too in the ocean, but it's basically the same. The rocks and minerals erode, and the phosphates get in the water, and the plants pull the phosphates from the water into their bodies, and then the animals eat the plants. So whenever animals and plants die, the phosphates return to the soil. Yes, Grant?
There was a lake in Maine where I used to live.
No, there wasn't.
Like, there were all the animals around the lake were like hunted, and so they had to like put phosphate in the water. It was pretty cool. There was like some like big deal about it.
How did that help?
I don't know. They were doing something.
Cause more plants to grow?
I think so. That was involved like phosphate and like I don't know really detail.
If we ever put a lot of phosphates or nitrates into the water, you get kind of an explosion of organisms. You can have what's called an algal bloom if you have too much phosphate in the water, because algae love to eat that stuff and they'll multiply like crazy.
Yeah, I think I had to do with the plant life or something.
Yeah. Video footage of phosphate cycle.
Let's talk about the phosphorus cycle, a nutrient cycle also known as the sedimentary cycle.
Phosphorus. Phosphorus is a poisonous combustible nonmetal commonly used in fireworks, explosives, matches, toothpaste, and fertilizers. In the natural environment, phosphorus is commonly found in water, soil, and sediments, but is also an important building block for animals and plants. Humans have phosphorus in their bones and teeth, energy storage molecules, and cell membrane fats. In the phosphorus cycle, processes like weathering cause phosphorus to move slowly from rock formations and ocean sediments to the soil, where plants absorb it. Animals get phosphorus by eating these plants, or other plant-eating animals. Decomposition of animals and plants returns phosphorus to soils and oceans. High phosphorus levels make plants grow more quickly, so farmers use phosphorus-rich fertilizers in agriculture. However, this fertilizer runs off into nearby lakes, rivers, and oceans, increasing phosphorus concentration and causing environmental problems like algal bloom. The phosphorus cycle varies from other nutrient cycles because it does not extend to the atmosphere and is a slower overall process.
Huh.
That guy had a weird voice, bro.
Yeah.
Voice box.
That was quick.
Like,
So, you read 2.3. Tomorrow we have a lab. Although now with the golf I'm not going to be here tomorrow.
Not a problem.
So I'm not sure what's going to happen. Maybe a video, yeah.
Can I ask a random question?
Yes.
Thank you, bro. Are you going to have Miss Swanson study all day?
Miss Swanson study. Yes. So you read, listen, you read 2.3 tonight, you study for biography. I won't be here tomorrow. Biography will be Thursday. The test is Friday. The chapters the test is on are 34, no, 35, 36, and 2. But remember, we only did 36.1, and we skipped, didn't we skip something in 35?
We skipped something on drugs.
We skipped the section, hold on.
Did we skip all nature?
We skipped 35.2. So we skipped 35.2 and we only did 36.1 and chapter 2. So although it's 3 chapters, it's really not that many, as many
It's like
sections.
6 sections.
It's like 6 sections. Okay? Yes, Graham?
Soccer, which I guess is just me. I might not be here Friday. Go with that Monday? Or
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Will is out.